What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Bojan vlog. It's still hot as fuck where I am, but I'm gonna continue. I have water, so I shouldn't die from dehydration. But anyway, excuse me. Okay, so today's entry is a continuation of last week's entry. Right, in last week's entry, I talked about the axes of value, which is, I hope I explained it adequately, right? Like, but like, in summary, like, the axis of value is a concept that I coined that is, you know, like kind of like a spiritual successor to my like axes of perception idea that I came up with years ago, right? You know, the axis of perception is a concept that kind of basically describes the difference, or like the orthogonality, if you will, like between content and context, right? Because like knowledge is important, right? And knowledge is really the cornerstone of like symbolic, like of like you kind of becoming more knowledgeable of the world, right? But like in order to take that information and to like kind of use it effectively, right, you then have to put it into context, right? So like and sometimes a piece of content, like even though it may seemingly like be like universally lauded or universally panned, like you have to kind of be careful in terms of like being more objective about it, basically, right? Because some, like, you know, it's like sometimes bad things are good and good things are bad, basically. It's like a short way of saying that, right? And then the axis of value is similar, but it talks instead of like you know, perception and interpretation of information, you know, it's more to do with like value, right? You know, and you could say like it's like kind of like it's a subdivision of the horizontal axis of the axis of perception, right? The context axis, because it delves into two similarly orthogonal like value structures or systems, right? One being logic, right, and the other one being emotion, right? You know, so yeah, so basically, I guess, infallibility versus sensibility. I don't know if that's sort of, I don't know if that's the right word, actually. I just kind of plucked that, yeah, but like, yeah, like I said, logic axis is predicated on hierarchy, right? So like, the way you think about it is like, or rather like, there are a few things that logic is concerned with. Like it's concerned with like power, right? And power not just in terms of like hierarchical power, in terms of human beings being on top and dominance hierarchies, right? But also in terms of like, like the effectiveness of something, right? You know, if something, if like idea or process or object A is more effective than, you know, than letter B, then obviously from a logical standpoint you would pick A because it's better, right? So yeah, it ties into effectiveness, but it also ties into like power dynamics between people, right? And then we get into emotional, which is like sensitivity, right? So like this is more concerned with like, I would say health, but like emotional health. Right, so like it obviously applies to other people and relationships, which I'm going to talk about in this entry, with other people, right? Because like, you know, people get upset, right? People get angry, people get jealous, people like, you know, and simultaneously people are happy, you know, people want to celebrate, and then like if you don't understand that, then that can kind of plummet them into negativity again. But like, you know, obviously this is an extension of your own feelings, right? So like, you know, they're both objective and subjective, right? In the sense that like, you know, they apply to the outside world and they also apply to your inside world, right? And it's very important to understand this, right? Because another reason why there are so many like misconceptions and disagreements in life, right, is because like people operate from different value structures, right? And like they don't necessarily kind of understand the one that they're not so natural at that well. And like when they encounter someone who is more dominant in the opposite value structure, then like, you know, misunderstandings and like frustration and all of that can arise, right? So towards that, I'm going to discuss like probably the most like kind of like profound manifestation of this, which is between men and women, right? Because traditionally, like, men are thought to be more logical, right? And women are thought to be more emotional, right? And like, you know, the statistics show this, right? You know, like, I'm no scientist or statistician, but like, you know, I'm sure the numbers are there, right? You know, like, men are more logical, women are more emotional, right? So like, I'm guessing that the entry title, you know, I said, you know, because like I wanted to make something like kind of, I guess a bit clickbaity, was like, are women just more complicated than men, right? So like, I actually want to dive a bit deeper than just the surface concept here, and I want to go into kind of more like the dynamics of men and women relationships, like themselves, right? So, but like, yeah, so when you talk to men, right, you might have examples of men who are more sensitive, like myself, and like maybe whoever's watching this, you know, you know, it's more likely that you're going to be someone like, if you're male, then you're going to be more sensitive, right? Because that's the kind of vibe I give out, right? But like, you know, there are exceptions basically, but like men, if you're, you know, interacting with men, then you can reasonably predict that they are going to be operating more from a logic structure, right? And more of a logic axis of value, right? Meaning that like, they're concerned with effectiveness, right? They're concerned with dominance. They're concerned with moving forwards, right? Surmounting practical problems and being involved with practical problems. And, you know, and obviously that's not to say men aren't emotional, right? Men are emotional, that's the thing, right? But like, you know, I guess our biology, right, makes it so that like men have a tendency towards like being more concerned with like power and effectiveness and like moving forwards than women, right? Because women are more emotional, right? You know, again, statistically speaking, right? Women, there are examples of women who are more go-getter and aggressive than some men, right? And most men, really. But like, if you're like the average woman, right, is more sensitive, right? You know, she's more concerned about the dynamics between people. She's more concerned with like maintaining the harmony between people. Like, I always was like a peacekeeper, like, you know, like I always wanted people to feel good, so I was always like this goofy guy who was happy, and like, you know, I would be really upset if there was conflict and stuff like that. So like, you know, that's the kind of role I had, right, as a sensitive male. But like, you know, you're more concerned with like being friends with people and like kind of like connecting with people and understanding them and like understanding their struggles, understanding their triumphs, and like sharing in that, because you yourself have hurt before many times, right? You have been triumphant and like elated before, you know, you felt like this indescribable feeling of awe and like connection and happiness, right? You felt it, right? And you want to share that with people, and you want to know where other people feel this, right? And like, that's the sensitivity dimension, right? And this is great. However, right, there are problems between these two things, right? You know, they like, when they come together, right? When logic and emotion come together, they're like water and oil in a way, right? You know, and this is a good analogy actually, because if you try to mix water and oil, what happens? Like, that shit is like, has a big middle finger up to you, like, fuck you. You want us to mix, right? But like, if you just let them settle, right, then like they settle pretty well, right? And like, I guess this is a good analogy for what I'm trying to say here, is like, so like, okay, yeah, so let me just start by describing like, I should have maybe did this on the last episode, but like, describing like, okay, what do these look like, right? Because like, I'm guessing that if you're watching this, you're either someone who is more logical or someone who's more emotional, right? And you can tell based on the problems that you encounter in your everyday life, right? So either you're person A, more logical, right? You're just baffled by people, right? You know, everything's going fine, and then suddenly someone like gets pissed off at you, or like someone says something that indicates that they're emotionally triggered, and like, and you're like, no, like, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to be rational and figure this out, because I want the best for you too, believe it or not. But it's just that like, sometimes you have to say things that like, that might trigger people because it's the truth, right? and like you know you have no kind of end of like people that you encounter, and like they end up like wigging out on you, and you're like, what the fuck, right? You know, like I'm just trying to help. I'm trying to be rational, and yes, like sometimes I can be a dick, right? I admit that, but like I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings on purpose. I'm just trying to be rational here, right? Person A. Person B, you're more like me, right? Traditionally, like, you know, like you're kind of like, you're just kind of like, you go through life and like you see people and like you try to be friendly to them because, you know, you want to be friendly to people. You're like, why would you be a dick to someone, you know? And like, when you talk to people, you're kind of insecure, right? Because you're afraid they won't like you, right? And you're afraid that like what you say is not going to be important to them, right? Because, and like you can't think of anything really that, you know, because like it's like you're thinking about them and it's like, okay, like, you know, I don't want to intrude too much, but I also want to connect with them because that's what it's like, or rather like I'm trying to like kind of like give to them like an extension of my heart, like kind of like I just, you know, I want to get to know your background, you know, and like what you feel and like your interests and stuff like that, right? So, you know, you're trying to connect to that person and you're, you know, I guess similar, like, you know, and it's like, but like, no matter what you do, right, like a lot of people are going to like kind of like steamroll you and like kind of like say things that hurt your feelings and let's just say not help your anxiety when it comes to dealing with people. If you're more anxious, right? Maybe you're not anxious, but or if maybe you're more like a expressive type. You know, I'm more of an introverted type. Right? Maybe you're more extroverted, and so like the majority of your interactions, like it's like it's like chaos, right? And it's like, and you're trying to understand why like people won't commit to you, if you will. Like maybe you're having this kind of a problem, right? You know, instead of like feeling like people are threatening in a sense, right? You feel that like people are flighty, you know, they don't like, they're like, it's like they don't tell you, you feel like they're not telling you what they're really thinking, and it's like you feel like you have to tread on eggshells, and you know, and it's just like, and you feel unloved sometimes, and you feel like underappreciated because like you try your best to like make other people feel good, and you try your best to understand other people, and you try your best to impact, like enable people to like feel good about who they are and like what their interests are, right? But like a lot of people, like you feel kind of like trample all over that, right? So, two personalities, two crippling situations. Here we go, Bojinjin blocks. So let me illustrate this with like, I guess the man and women thing, right? So like I started this in the previous episode, but like imagine, you know, you're in a relationship with a man and a woman, right? And like there's something comes up, right? You come home from work, right? And you know, it's just like fucking I think it would be weird if this didn't happen. Well, to be honest, like I've never been in like a marriage or anything like that, so maybe this hasn't happened to me, but like I'm guessing that like this is highly relatable, right? It's like you're a man, you have a job, you go home after a long day's work, right? And like you really fucking you know, pushed it out, or like either that or like, you know, you're just stressed. Maybe you didn't do that much work, but you're fucking stressed and you want to go home and relax, right? You know, drink a beer, watch some sports, or play some games, or whatever it is you like to do. And you come home, and your wife, like, she's not like ferocious in you right away, but like you're even feeling it as you enter your house, and your wife is like starting, like, you know, you feel that there's something amiss, right? Because like, just something's off, right? And you're like, oh fuck, like, she's not mad at me. She like, and you go in, and lo and behold, like, her tone is cold and distant, and like, and you know, you try to like diffuse it, right? You know, by telling her about like what you've been through and asking her how her day's been, and like eventually, like she's just like, okay, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah, right? And it's like maybe, like, and it's just like a bunch of stuff. It's like, you know, I just don't know. You know, maybe she'll be like, I don't know. You know, I just don't know. Just, you know what? It's okay. Just, you know, I know you're tired. Right, just have your beer, you know, I've made dinner for you, I'm just gonna go upstairs. And you're like, am I in detention? Did I do something bad? You know, you're like 12 again, you know, in secondary school, like in detention. Like, you know, and it's like, what the fuck, right? And then like eventually, like she emerges and you talk to her and she's like, I don't know, I'm sorry, like I just didn't feel that great. And like, you know, blah, blah. And then she like tells you the problem, right? She tells you the problem. So maybe this doesn't end catastrophically, right? But like, maybe she tells you something like it's like, you know, you said that you'd do this, you know, you said that like you would check this for me, and like I didn't hear anything from you, you know, it was kind of really important, you know, and you didn't do it. And then you'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, you know. I was working like a dog all day, but like, I'm sorry, right? You know, I'm sorry, right? And like, this can, you know, that's an example. I hope you liked it. But like, you know, I have not been in that situation before. I just made it up, right? But like, I can kind of like guess, right? But like, this can escalate a lot, I'm sure, right? You know, because hell, you know, she might get super annoyed at you, and you're like, what the fuck, B word, you know, or like, you know, or like, and you're like, okay, listen, right? She's like, I don't understand, like, you know, it's like, you know, it's just one thing, right? You know, I just want you to do one thing, and you don't do it, and it's like, you know, please, like, you know, I need you to like be with me sometimes. You know, I feel like sometimes you're not with me, and I need you to be with me. You know, it's like when you're not with me, it's like, it's just like, I feel it's disrespectful of me, and like I feel like you're not appreciating me. And then like the man might be like, okay, listen, right? I really tried to remember, you know, I really did, but like, you know what? Like, I had 50 things to do that day, right? And it's like, I was already like hungover. No, I was already like, you know, tired, and like the boss wanted me to work extra because it's a really important thing, right? I took it on board because, like, you know, hey, you know, it's important, you know, it's my company, right? And, you know, and like, so, and you're like, you know, like, I try, you know, next time I'll write it down, right? I'll write it down, and like, you know, I'll do it, okay? Like, I'm sorry, right? And then she might be like, you know what, it's okay, don't worry about it. But like, it's still cold, right? And you're like, you know, and it's just like, right? But the thing is, right? The thing is that if both parties were being honest, right? And I'm saying this, I'm assuming that they're like people who don't have serious like issues, right? Not to be mean, but like, you know, some people just have serious issues, but like, assuming that they're not serious issues as an example, right? You know, like the man understands. The man's like, yeah, I guess she did. Maybe it was like a date or something, and you said you'd take her on a date and you didn't, right? You know, like, you're like, it'd be nice to take a date somewhere, and like a month passes or 2 months passes, and like nothing happens, and she's like, he said he'd take me on a date. He said, like, you know, he would do something with us, like with us together, right? And like, so she's like, she feels really upset by that, and you know, and like, but like, and in the back of the mind, he knows that, you know, if he's a normal guy, he knows that she's upset, right? That's obvious, right? He just doesn't know what she's upset about, right? Specifically, right? Because he's like, my life is primarily predicated on me handling tasks, and like, and like that kind of thing, right? So like, there must be something that I can change, because that's kind of my role in the family, that's gonna help her and like help make her life easier, right? That's maybe your approach as a man, right? The woman, if she's healthy, right, she'll know that the man is trying his best, right? She might think back afterwards and then apologize and be like, you know, I'm sorry, babe, like, I was just upset, like, I know you work really hard, you know, I'm really glad that you're working hard for us, you know, just like, you know, just be honest with me, and like, be real with me, you know, I'm here with you, you know, don't feel like you need to keep anything from me, kind of thing, right? So both parties understand, but like, do they necessarily understand like how to prevent this from happening in the future? Because it will happen, right? And like, I don't know, right? Disclaimer is like, again, I'm just making this shit up, but like, it was something I thought about, right? Sorry, just give me a second. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just, you know, and like, basically, we go back to this axis of value, right? Because, right, with this example, right, the man is trying to make things better, right? Because in a way, that's his role as a man, right? And I'll tell you what, it's a fucking damn complicated plan, right? So like, I'm going to address like the title that I have in this video, right? And that is like, are women more complicated than men? Yes, 100% no. Like, I want to extend that, right? I'm not disagreeing with it, but like, I want to provide you with more depth to that, right? Because I realized something, right? It's like, it's not that women are more complicated than men per se, right? It's that the thing that women desire from men, and therefore the thing that men are supposed to do for women, is complex. Right? And similarly, right, if you look at the other thing, right, so like I talked about desire, right, what women desire and what men bring, right. This is incidentally why men like are lost beyond lost sometimes, right? They just kind of like lose, like they don't know what they're doing. They might turn to crime. They might turn to like, you know, desperate things and like drugs and like shit like that, right? It's because it isn't always clear. Like, if anything, it's not clear most of the fucking time what a man is supposed to bring to the table. That's the aspect of women that's complicated, right? What she desires in a man. Because what she desires from a man is a bunch of stuff, right? You know, you could give it a few labels. You know, she wants him to be trustworthy. She wants him to be considerate. But she also wants him to be, like, strong and not weak. And also thoughtful. And also, like, emotionally, like, you know, kind of, like, strong, I guess, grounded, right? You know, and, like, there's a bunch of things. Like, she wants him to be, like, to know how to do things, right? You know, the list goes on, right? You know, so what women want from men is a whole bunch of stuff. And that's what men are supposed to give to women, right? Now, men are simple, right? Is that necessarily true, right? So, like, basically what I've done is I've bifurcated, right? You know, like the whole, like, who's more complicated and who's more simple, right? So, like, if we take what we just said, right? Women's desires are complicated, and therefore what men have to give to women is complicated, right? What men desire is then simple, right? What do men desire? Hotness, beauty, maybe she has to be nice, but like that's the main thing, right? She has to be attractive and attractive, right? You know, there's more to it than that, you know. I don't want to like oversimplify, but like it's like that's why that adage exists. It's because like, you know, men are simple because like they just want to fuck and sleep and drink beer or something, right? You know, and it's like, yes, right? Because a man's desire is simple, and therefore, what women give to men is simple, right? Women, like, you know, it's like, obviously, like, this is very, like, kind of loaded, and, like, it's like, because, you know, obviously, because, like, it's so simple what women need, it's also very daunting, because it's like, okay, men only think about one thing, right? Attractiveness, right? Therefore, I have to get it right. Therefore, if I don't have that, then I am pretty much fucked, right? And that's what a lot of women think. That's why most women, I guess, have body dysmorphia of some kind. It's like, it's simple. It is simple, right? You know, all you really have to do is like do that, right? And most women kind of like figure that out. And they're like, okay, I need to become attractive, right? However, right, and like, yeah, so like, yeah, but like, obviously that means that like women feel like they have nothing else to offer. Right. As a man, it's like you have a bunch of shit that you have to get in order for a woman to approve of you, right? However, like you can you're a bit more diffuse, right? You're not like you have to be good looking. If you're not good looking, you're fucked, mate. You know, but that's how it is for women. But like, so I wanted to extend that. You know, I wanted to answer that question I posed in the title. It's like, are women more complicated than men? Yes, in terms of desire, but not in terms of what they provide. Right? And simultaneously, men are simple in terms of what they need from women, in terms of like what women bring, but it's complicated for them in terms of what they provide, right? That's why, like, I guess there are more like fucking personal development stuff that's tailored to men, right? You know, and there's more like women's entertainment, for example, is more diverse, right? It's because like, you know, it's very up in the air, like, you know, like it takes a lot of discussion to pinpoint, first and foremost, how a man should be for women to like him and et cetera, right? For him to be liked by the people, you know, for him to have value in society, right? So that's why there's so much fucking shit dedicated to that. You know, we've got to teach men to be confident. We've got to teach men to be skilled. and to enjoy the process of learning and becoming skilled, we have to teach them to be open-minded. We have to teach them to master their emotions. We have to understand them to see things differently and to get out of their comfort zone and to do this and to do that and to, you know, be creative and all this shit, right? You know, for a woman, it's like, yeah, like there are many shades of woman. Like, you know, this is the thing, right? It's not like just like beauty, right? It's like, well, what standard of beauty, right? You know, like the thing I would recommend after saying that is like, you know, for women, just like own it. Own what you have, right? And I know it's easier said than done. I know I'm a stupid guy on the internet and I'm spouting bullshit, but like, I think that I think that like the best thing that you can do for yourself is to discover what's attractive about you, right? And you may not have, unfortunately, like, you know, the more traditional, you know, signals of beauty, but like, you know what? Maybe you're really like attractive personality-wise, because that is a thing, right? Trust me, that's a thing, right? And then all you need to do is just like find a style in terms of like your look that kind of like complements that, right? You know, that sounds like fun to me. It's also stressful. I understand, right? It's probably fucking stressful, right? Because you're scared of people judging you, you know, you're scared of falling short, but like, just, I don't know, do it in private and like kind of really do that, right? And yes, yeah, it takes a bit of objectivity, right? You know, that's the thing, right? But, so yeah, that's my illustration. It's getting really hot, like, I'm sorry. I was planning to do another entry after this, but like, I think I'm gonna collapse from like dehydration after this if I'm not careful, so just let me... Okay, so I hope that's enough, right? You know, it's like, maybe it's not enough, but like, you know, in summary, right, it would help for the man to understand what the woman wants, right? And I'm going to tell you what the woman wants, right? She wants you to love her. You know, what is love? It's like, it's, funnily enough, it's managing your life so that what you have left, you give to her, right? So choose your partner wisely. You know, but you know, it's like that's it, right? You know, it's like you build your life the way you want it. You make sure that you fucking nail that shit, and then the rest of the time that you decided to commit to this woman, commit to her, right? You know, like, you know, find out about her, because you might be surprised. That's the thing. It's like, you might be surprised in terms of what she likes. And, you know, obviously what she likes might change because we're all human, right? You know, what we like can change, how we are can change. But it's like, communicate at least, right? You know, whenever you have a conflict, it's probably the best time to discuss this. It's like, kind of like, be like, okay. She might, and it's like, bear in mind, like, she might not tell you directly. If you have someone who tells you directly, great, right? You know, that's really, really good, because that kind of like makes it easy for you. But like, some people won't, right? Because they're afraid. It's the way they were brought up, you know, so you have to kind of guess, right? And then obviously there's a lot that goes into that, you know. If you're being a man, like, I'm going to be like completely honest, it's like, you get to decide if like she's worth pursuing, right? And like, yeah, again, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just being like real, right? You know, that's a possibility. I'm not saying do it, right? But like, that's a possibility. But like, if she is the one for you, if you do love her, then like, you need to kind of like, understand like what is her form of value, right? What is her form of love, right? And things like the 5 love languages and things like that. I think she might even suggest things like that to you, so that you can, because like, she will, right? You know, like, in all honesty, she probably will. She'll give you things that is an indication of what she likes, right? And like, you have to decide like how you're going to cater for that, you know, because if you can't, then you have to figure a way where like she can still be okay without you, right? You know, and it's like, think of it in a problem-solving way, right? But like, when all else fails, right? Because like, do that. That's like the fucking, that's numero uno, number 1, right? Numero uno rule numero uno, right? But like, once you've done that and she's still upset, like, you need to like just listen, right? And get this, right? You probably also feel upset, right? So what you do is you listen and you let your thoughts subside, and you just let the chaos of your heart like kind of just take you for a second. Cry, scowl, you know, like, look angry, it's up to you, right? But like, she's actually showing you how to be more in touch with your feelings, right? Because like, you have feelings too, right? And like, what you're trying to do in listening, it's not just like, yes, sometimes you listen just so that she'll piss off, right? But But like, if if you care, or like if you want to try, then what you're doing is like, you're trying to like meet somewhere in the middle, right? And sometimes that takes shit. And it's not about what you do, right? That is important, right? So like, this is the feminine component. It's like, you have to like understand, or like, you have to understand like what your man is trying to do. You have to understand that there are practical problems, and like sometimes maybe like your emotional outbursts are unjustified, right? I'm not saying they are, right? God forbid I'm not saying they are, right? If you feel what you feel, you feel what you feel, right? Fuck me, right? You feel what you feel, fuck me, right? However, when sometimes you're in like a relaxed mood, you can think about like the last time you had a row with your man, right? And be like, okay, did I really, and I'm sure most women, well, it's like, I can see women doing this, right? It's just like, it's maybe a bit foreign to her, but like, she can be like, okay, at the very least, right, like, let me kind of think it through and see what I was actually angry at. And let me try my best to articulate it to my man, right? It's like, maybe you don't have to necessarily go out and do it on yourself if you're not that way inclined, right? Some women, independent as fuck, right? They'll do whatever, they're like, they don't need no man except, to fuck, but they'll do it on their own. But like, if you're the kind of woman who wants the man to be the man, like, and wants him to grow in his masculinity, it doesn't mean you're a pushover. It doesn't mean like, you're not going to do anything by yourself, right? But like, if there's something you want your man to do, then like, you communicate it to him, and then you negotiate, right? Because what is needed is a balance between practicality and sensitivity. It's super fucking important, right? Because like, you have to know, you have to like solve the problem. You have to fucking solve the problem, right? Because the problem will destroy a relationship, right? It will, potentially, right? If not add to like the shittiness of it, right? But like, you also need sensitivity, because sensitivity is the basis for accurate understanding of another person, and also of like joy and happiness and harmony, right? And sometimes that shit is fucking dark, right? And like, if you're more sensitive like me, you're more used to it, right? So, but like, I can imagine like for someone who's more logical minded, it's like, oh, like she's like fucking like, I'm gonna kill you. It's like, okay, maybe that's a bit too graphic, but like, like it can get heated, and like, you're just like, I don't want to deal with this, right? And like, maybe you don't, right? Maybe you walk away, right? But in the 10 minutes, nay, half an hour that you're away, and you have a chance to be away from her, right? Think, like, feel what she said to you. Feel it, right? And guess what? Maybe all you need to say is that, like, that was painful, it did hurt me. But you know what? Like, it's what happened, and, let's talk it through. Let me listen first, and then let's talk it through, right? And then you talk it through, right? So, I hope you're getting this, right? It's easier said than done, I suppose, but like, this applies to any relationship. It's like, one person might kind of, it's like the same as politics, man, or any other ideological kind of thing, right? It's like, some people like kind of like, gets pushed. It's like the argument effect, basically. Like, people get pushed, like people who are more over, like, people who are more or less centrist, right? Or central, I'm not sure how you say that, but like, they're more on the fence, like, they get pushed to liberalism, for example, and the other half gets pushed to conservatism, and it becomes this heuristic slanging match of like positions, like ideological positions, right? And that's the bane of our current society, right? But like, the thing is that that might happen, it probably will happen, but like, if you have like this knowledge that, like, what, like, there are two ways of looking at things, right? The man is trying to like get shit done, right? He's not fucking around necessarily, he's just trying to get things done. He's trying to take on responsibility. Sometimes he may be a fuck up, right? Let's be honest, right? Sometimes he's a fuck up, but like, his role is still to like carry the family. And like, he needs to do that as the man, right? As the woman, you express how you feel about the relationship, right? And like, there's a lot of wisdom that can come from what you say. However, like, you also like have to like sometimes be a bit objective and be like, okay, like, what do I want to tell him? And I'm going to tell him, right? I'm going to tell him this because it's really bugging me. But this other thing I mentioned, maybe it's not so important, right? Maybe I can handle it for next time, or maybe I can discuss with him a way to deal with it practically, right? So, whether it be with your relationship partner or your friends or your parents, like, you have to kind of like, you have to have those two on deck, right? Because sometimes you need to solve problems, right? Sometimes you need to solve problems and make crucial decisions, right? But sometimes you need to be sensitive, not only to other people, but to yourself, right? So that you don't feel like fucking like, you don't feel like, you know, just like terrible or like angry or frustrated, right? Because you will, you know, it doesn't matter if you know that it's not right to feel that way. You know, you're like, well, it's just an emotion, it'll go away, you know. It's like, no, you still feel it, right? And sometimes it's good to address that, right? Sometimes. Use your discernment, right? But like, anyway, that's my example. I want to carry on, but like, it's honestly too hot right now. I wanted to discuss like how this plays out in like, okay, let me do this for you guys because I love you guys, right? I'm getting heat stroke, but I love you guys, so I'm going to do it. Okay, so this also applies to like when you interact with society, like when you like, let's say that you're trying to like do something with your life, right? You might be trying to make a career, right? You might be trying to join something, some kind of group or community, and like, and like you have a certain way of going about it, but like you bump into some problems, right? You know, like the people aren't as nice as you thought they were, you know, that's your immediate reaction, but like, you know, it's like, maybe you join another group, or maybe you join like a few more groups out of that, but like the same problem comes up and you're like, maybe this genre or this sector is just fucking full of dickheads, right? But it's like, okay, right, if if you're passionate about what you're doing, right, then I'm guessing that like switching, like hastily switching disciplines or whatever it might be may not be the best thing to do, right? So like instead, like you need to like, you can look at this framework, you know, this axis of values framework, and look where your strengths are and like where like your weaknesses are, in terms of like maybe someone is communicating to you in a way that is at odds with how you're communicating, right? And like you have to kind of like, you have to get to the logical person has to be like has to be effective, right? You know, because there could be a thing where like the logical person's just like, you know what, let's not talk about this, you know, I'm tired, like I don't want to deal with this right now, you know, this is not one of my immediate concerns, right? And you just go, right? Or if you're the emotional person, you become petulant, right? You know, you're like, fuck this guy, fuck this bitch, you know, like I don't give a shit, right? Like they're a piece of shit, why should I waste my breath on them? Or you might just be upset, you might just be like, you know, as opposed to angry, you might be like, there's no point, you know, and you get into depression, it's like, people just don't understand me, you know, there's no point telling anyone anything. I'll just do what I was doing before and just give them a mask, you know, then nothing will go wrong, right? No. Hard to fucking do, but no, right? You know, hard to not do, I mean, right? What you need to do, right, is if you're the logical person, you need to be effective, right? But you temper that effectiveness, you open a channel for like the sensitivity of the other person to, like, you listen to what they're saying, you have to listen, right? But be effective, right? You know, and like you might have to, and it's difficult, you know, like again, like I'm a fucking idiot, like I'm just spreading ideas, I haven't actually done this, but like, yeah, you know, but like as the emotional person, you then like, you have to be honest. You have to be honest. You have to be honest about what you're feeling, right? Some people are better at this than others. Like if you're more extroverted, you might be like, just like, you're a dick, right? But then you have to be open enough and like objective enough to be like, okay, I'm pissed right now, or I'm upset, or like I feel like a worthless piece of shit. And like maybe I need like the logical person, or maybe I need to go and be petulant and like just like fucking don't do anything, right? But eventually your emotions will die down, and then you can think in terms of like, okay, does something need to be discussed? Right? Does something need to be discussed? And then you can start to have a conversation. And it's like, yeah, it's really difficult, right? Because you'll find things out about each other that you may not have expected, that like may be like potentially deal breakers. And by that I mean like, you know, just like, okay, I don't feel that way at all, you know. And it's like, but like it has to happen, right? And like I hope that this idea will help you at least. Maybe you don't want to do it right away because, like, you know, hey, sometimes relationships are sticky, right? But like maybe you can start to think about this kind of thing, you know? Not too much, right? Because it's just an idea, right? You know, but like it's just like, okay, you know, it's a guideline, you know, use it at your discretion, right? You know, don't use it to justify anything. You know, just like have a think about it, right? So cool. Anyway, I need to end this entry because I'm literally gonna die of heat stroke. So I hope you enjoyed this entry, and I will catch you in the next episode of Junior Vlogs. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, feel free to drop me one and I will have a look at it. And yeah, until next time, guys, I need to be in the ice cooler right now. Peace out, guys. Have a good one. Peace out.